Hello, I'm Rosia.
I'm Frank.
And I'm Sammy, and this video is going to help educate you on the school system in the United States.
We will talk about the basics, going over the school timeline, private versus public schools, the way students learn, and we will also be touching on personal experiences of our own.
The first step in a student's educational career is preschool. This is designed for students ages 3 years old to 4 years old, and it's actually not compulsory most of the time. While in preschool, children learn basic shapes and colors, they learn the alphabet and numbers, and they work on their fine and gross motor skills. Preschools are usually private, though some districts actually have preschools in them focusing on preparing students for kindergarten.
Next is kindergarten. It includes ages 4 to 5. Like preschools, some schools have half days for kindergarten. It can also be done privately, but most schools offer it publicly through the district. This may not seem like the most important grade a student goes through, but kindergarten really helps prepare students for their future grades. Students learn basic reading and writing skills and focus largely on teaching kids social skills, positive interactions, and getting ready for elementary school.
The next step in the education system is elementary school. This includes ages 6 through 10 and 1st through 5th grade. Elementary school focuses primarily on basic reading and math skills. Usually around 3rd grade, they start to learn basic science and social studies. This becomes a more regular part of the curriculum around 4th or 5th grade. More often than not, students stay with the same teacher for each subject. This time in a student's life provides a basic framework and foundation for the more challenging, content-heavy work they'll be doing in middle school. Additionally, teachers at the elementary level usually invest a great deal of time and energy fostering a student's curiosity and teaching them to become excited about learning. This is especially important at such a young age due to the fact that elementary school is the student's first encounter with learning. A student's elementary school experience can set the tone for how they feel about school for the rest of their educational career. Throughout elementary school, students experience the most significant educational growth due to being introduced to multiple subjects within a relatively brief period of time.
After 5th grade, the next step in a student's educational career is junior high, more commonly called middle school. Now, while some schools lump 6th grade in with elementary school, it's more common for this to be the start of middle school. The transition from elementary to middle school can be a huge culture shock for some students, and middle school is generally a very emotionally turbulent time in a student's life. As such, middle school teachers play a very significant role in a child's development, often having to act as mediators, guides, and moral support, in addition to teaching classroom content. At this point, the curriculum becomes more specific than simply reading and math with some science and social studies here or there. For example, instead of just having a general social studies class, students may spend 1 year learning about the Middle Ages, 1 year learning about US history, and 1 year learning about civics and government, just to name one example. Additionally, this is usually the first time in a student's life where they have multiple different teachers for multiple different subjects. Although the material students are learning is more in-depth than what they learned in elementary school, the majority of middle school is actually focused on using classroom content as a tool for teaching students skills, including critical thinking, self-reflection, proper grammar, how to take proper notes, and how to form their own opinions and conclusions, all skills that will come in handy for high school.
After completing middle school, students move on to high school. Typically lasts 4 years from 9th to 12th grade. Although some schools split up high schools into junior and senior high, with senior high being 11th and 12th grade. Whereas middle school uses content to teach skills, so to speak, high school uses skills to teach content. What this means is that the time students get to their freshman year in high school, students are expected to already know skills such as proper note-taking, proper essay formatting, etc. And as such, these skills are not covered. Because of this, the curriculum in high school is much more content-based. While there is still a main core of classes that need to be covered, students learn more in-depth subjects and get prepared for college. When you complete high school, you receive a diploma.
After completing high school, you can either be done with schooling or you can continue your educational career, which is college. College is the first step in higher education. When beginning college, you can go straight to a 4-year university, or you can start at a 2-year community college, which is generally cheaper, and then transfer to a 4-year university of your choosing. There are multiple educational degrees that students may accomplish over a period of time. A 2-year degree is the associate's degree. 4-year degree is a bachelor's degree, which is most likely required in order to attain jobs in the career of your choosing. After completing these, you can go on to earn your master's or your doctorate, which is the highest degree in education. The further you go in your education typically results in getting paid higher than others with less education.
Next, we're going to be talking about the difference between public and private schools. Now, when it comes to public and private schools, usually it's up to the parents as to whether or not their child goes to one or the other. Although it's often thought that private schools are better than public schools, this is actually a common misconception. They're actually apples and oranges, and you can't compare the two really because while they serve the same purpose, they're structured completely differently. First of all, public schools are usually funded by the state in the form of property taxes, whereas private schools are usually funded primarily through tuition. This means that private schools are structured much more like an actual profit-based business, and they're usually catering to the wants and needs of the people paying their tuitions. And as such, private schools usually have more specific focuses on things like religious education, performing arts, and athletics, whereas public schools represent the community at large and are a lot more standardized across the board. Additionally, it's important to look at the motive behind each school. Since private schools are driven by profit, there's much more focusing on advertising the school and making it attractive to potential parents and students. Public schools, on the other hand, are oftentimes a lot more utilitarian due to the fact that they're simply a publicly funded center for education. The focus of public schools is less on attracting potential students and parents and simply on providing the students in their community with the basic education that they need.
Public schools allow all students to enroll, but private schools can be competitive and they can pick and choose who they let in. This tends to make private schools much smaller than public schools.
The private school system usually does a good job at college prep, but the quality of public school college prep varies by school district. This is because the teachers in public schools are only allowed to teach the Common Core standards, while private schools have more flexible standards. This can be a good thing because elective classes are offered in both public and private schools, but the choice is that private schools are more unique.
Another important part of the American school system is the existence of charter and magnet schools. Now, people often talk about these two things as if they're one and the same. However, this is wrong. There's a few very important differences between them. Now, magnet schools are public schools that exist within a local school system and often focus on one or two specific subjects that they put greater emphasis on. Some examples of magnet schools include the Illinois Math and Science Academy and the Chicago High School of Performing Arts. Usually these schools attract highly qualified teachers who are experts in their fields and also attract students who are extremely proficient in one or two different disciplines. They're usually application only, and while they're funded through the same means as typical public schools, you often have students from several different districts headed to magnet schools. Now, charter schools, on the other hand, are public schools that aren't part of a local school district. Instead, they act as contractors, for lack of a better word, with a state or local government. An example of a charter school that's fairly well known in the area would be Jones College Prep in Chicago. Now, originally, charter schools existed as a place for teachers to develop non-traditional methods of instruction, and this is still something that's true today. Oftentimes, charter schools allow their teachers more autonomy in the classroom and more say over what they're teaching. However, they often compensate their teachers at lower rates than public schools, so it's kind of a trade-off.
I went to a private preschool at a local church, and then public schooling for elementary, middle, and high school that were all in the same school district. After high school, I attended community college and will be transferring to university for my last 2 years. My dad did not attend college and went straight into the workforce. My oldest brother joined the military right out of high school and then later got his degree paid for by the military. My other brother did ROTC while enrolled in college. The Army paid for his education, but when he graduates, he owes them 4 years of active duty. I chose to pay for my own education rather than joining the military like both of my siblings.
Now, my school district actually had a local preschool that I started going to instead of a private one. After that, I went to a local elementary school for kindergarten, but I ended up getting homeschooled for first and second grade. I ended up transferring back to the same elementary school from third grade onward, though, because I missed my friends, and I stayed in the district for the rest of the time until I graduated. While I was homeschooled, the methods that my mother used to teach me were sort of similar to the Montessori style of teaching, where students have autonomy over what they learn. Although I was required to learn certain subjects, the order, methods in which I learned them, and time spent on each subject were more or less up to me. This gave me a genuine love for learning, although it was somewhat of a culture shock when I went back to public school and had to adjust to such a completely different environment. I ended up going to community college after that and will be transferring to a university for my last 2 years with the hopes of becoming a middle school social studies teacher. My sister is planning on doing the same thing as well. When I graduate, I'll actually be the first in my family to finish college. My mom left with 1 class short of a bachelor's degree, and my dad went straight into the workforce, so I will be the first in my family to graduate with a bachelor's.